We do here on Skiba News Nation, please like and subscribe, and also share with others so we can grow the biggest truth-seeking community on the internet. Huge shout out to all of our Patreons out there. If you like bonus content, you want some extra Skiba News Nation stuff, please go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation.
Welcome to Skiba News Nation, bringing you unfiltered views, news, interviews, discussions, and more. And now, here's your host, Jeremiah Skiba, award-winning musician and son of Rob Skiba.
With the son of the legendary Rob Skiba, Jeremiah Skiba, what's up?
With my great and insightful co-host, Mr. Jake Graham. It's like they don't even want to wake up.
He's on a quest for truth.
So we're about to fold the laundry. Notice anything weird about it? He did this to himself. Hi, cute boy. Yeah, how did you even do that? How did you even do that? You're like E.T. Everybody go follow this cute little kitty at Charlie Skiba Cat.
Who needs personality when you can switch who you are at the push of a button?
It's Sid, Swish, Kamala. That's right.
Oh, hello, young lady. Quite a marvelous day, innit?
Why does she talk so weird?
Let me play with her.
Well, hey there, little nugget. I'm gonna be the first black female president of the United States of America.
Man, this doll sucks.
Accent Switch Kamala can emulate any accent you like, as long as it grants her credibility.
Oh, bonjour, tu aimes les croissants?
Merde américaine.
Guten Tag, Sie lieben ein Bratwurst? Ufta, 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 da.
Luke, I am your mother.
It's Sid, Swish, Kamala. That's right.
But wait, there's more. All new Accent Switch Kamala comes with 2 bags of campaign money, a blind eye for illegal immigration, and her own multi-laugh 3000 generator. Laugh in every way possible. Let Accent Switch Kamala turn your life into a complete circus.
When you give me more money, like Uncle Joey did.
Don't you wear a little mad? The money's coming.
I don't understand.
Oh, excuse me, honey.
I meant to say, the money is coming. I love ice cream, clumping on map.
It's Accent Switch Kamala and brand new Tampon Tim.
You know, my grandma always used to say, Kamala Janu, please wash your hands so we can eat our chicken masama.
It's Sid, Swish, Kamala.
Well, hey, Skiba News Nation family, welcome to episode 103 of Skiba News Nation, your weekly source of the latest news, controversial topics, conspiracies, forgotten history, and so much more. I'm your host, Jeremiah Skiba. Episode 103, we will be discussing some explicit content, so viewer discretion is advised, like the dark truth about what's going on at ground zero of Hurricane Helene, French president compared to Jupiter, is he the last president of Europe? Iran's massive cyber attack on the US. Boeing laying off 10% of employees worldwide. Trump's third assassination attempt. Voting machines and the proof of fraud. HAARP using frequency to control the weather. An all-new Opus Corner, and for History's Mysteries, we'll be talking about George Reeves Revisited, Mystery, Murder, or Sewer Slide, New Evidence, and Deathbed Confession, and Volume 2 of Please Excuse My Sense of Humor. Memes and much more, so subscribe and stay tuned. Now, this is the only doll that I like.
I have no choice but to tell you, you're
You're fired. Anyways, I'd like to introduce my great and insightful co-host and the creator of the awesome game, Tribe the Game, Jake Grant. Welcome, Jake.
Hello, Jeremiah. How's it going, man?
Going good. What about you?
Going great. I am out here in an undisclosed location on a long camping trip, you could call it, for some festival celebration. But anyways, man, I'm super excited to get the game into everybody's hands. I've been talking it up for months, and we finally got it back from the manufacturer, got it into people's hands. As of right now, people are playing my game. And if you want to get your hands on a copy, you can go to tribethegame.net.
Well, I want to show you this. This is the ad I made of me unboxing your game, so check this out.
But I've been shipping games all day yesterday. Super excited for people to get their hands on my my board game, and I got some pictures if you guys want to see.
I sure do. I can't wait to get mine.
On the way, check it out. This is me signing the limited edition boxes. And then, of course, loading each and every box up with very special goodies and even things that you guys didn't know you were going to get. Super excited. And then, of course, on the way to the post office. I'm pretty excited. I got to ship out a whole bunch of the games, so be on the lookout. And hope you guys enjoy them once you get your hands on them. And inside each game is a very rare special collector edition holo card, randomly distributed, so hold on to those. You know, one day it might be worth some money.
Yeah, I can't wait to get my hands on a box and play with my wife and my cats.
Oh yeah, sweet. If you're interested and you didn't get a game, go check out tribethegame.net. Tribethegame.net, and hope you guys enjoy it.
Hey Jake, we got your game, so I thought I would do an unboxing video. Jake.
Came very securely packed.
I got his, and when I was over there,
super stoked to get it.
Pretty kitty. Very cool. Very, very cool.
Lindsay said I said cool too much, but I mean, it's cool, so.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Very cool.
Yeah, a lot of cool stuff in there for everybody.
Thanks, man.
A limited collector's holo card in there.
I'm Jeremiah Skiba.
I love that so much, man. I love that.
And this is my holo card that I got, and I love it. I had it behind me. Also, I wanted to share with you that something that, well, you definitely haven't seen, but I got a voicemail to our Skiba News Nation hotline about your game, and I wanted to play it here, so let's play that.
Hi, Skiba News Nation family. This is a message just to let you know I got my game in the mail and my CD from Jakey, and I am so tickled to death. I've already got a tribe party plan. So
tribe party plan.
That's coming next weekend. Thank you guys. Thank you for everything you do. I love the show, and last week's show was so killer good. Have a great day. Tell your mom hi, Jeremiah. Love you. Bye-bye.
And we love you back. I was so, like, in awe that she had already set up a party to play it, and I was like, that's cool. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
But yeah, she's one of our.
Thank you guys so much. Yeah, and Gary, thank you so much for the support and everybody else who got the game, and Jeremiah. Yeah, and I hope you guys have a lot of fun playing it. You know, it's designed for families, up to 4 players. You can even have up to 8 players if you play teams of 2 and combine 2 games together. So it's really fun. It's designed for parties, and really having some strategy that you can also talk over as people take turns. That's kind of the idea. But
all right, Opa, did you bring up that pic by chance, or no?
Did I what?
Bring up that picture.
Oh,
don't worry about it. Don't worry. Yeah, don't worry about it. Okay, so yeah, man, you got some good current news for me today?
We have so many videos to get through, guys. It is a pressing time. I mean, we've talked about it for months. This is election season. We're like within a month of the election, so y'all know it. Let's get into the videos today.
Let's do it.
All right, let's start with the most pressing news. This is Bear Independent with some cutting-edge information coming out of North Carolina and the disaster there in Asheville. I wanted to share this because we're trying to do our best to help promote good information in the face of misinformation and disinformation that's purposely being put out there to obscure the truth. But what's fishy about that is the whole concept of misinformation and disinformation was used as a label against good information just a few years ago. So how do we navigate these waters? It's a very, let's say, sketchy thing to do. But let's just say we have to use the word allegedly in front of a lot of things. But let's check out this clip from our good friend Bear Independent from his fob there near North Carolina and Tennessee, I believe. Check this out.
Good morning. I'm Bear from the internet. Please hold your questions until the end. Repeat, please hold your questions until the end because we have a lot of ground to cover. All right. So approximately 10 days ago, I was in Eastern Oklahoma, and I left from Eastern Oklahoma to head to Eastern Tennessee. Grindstone is based out of Eastern Oklahoma, Spiro, Oklahoma. Now, Grindstone had personnel on the ground in Eastern Tennessee after Hurricane Helene, I believe 26 hours after the storm hit, and began spinning up operations. I had pastoral responsibilities, and I was unable to be there immediately, but our executive director, as well as a staff of volunteers, was on site almost immediately after the storm. I left Eastern Tennessee, and I went to Camden, Tennessee to speak at the Self-Reliance Festival, where, as the spirit would have it, I had written a talk called Surviving Communism in the Countryside prior to Hurricane Helene even being a thing. And so I gave that talk at Self-Reliance Festival in light of what Grindstone had been experiencing in Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina. There also was a wedding and 12 baptisms that I was blessed to perform in Camden, Tennessee. So it was beautiful. It was wonderful. We left Camden ahead of schedule because the conviction was to get to Eastern Tennessee, specifically Jonesboro, Tennessee, where Grindstone had established a FOB, a forward operating base, at the Cherry Grove Baptist Church. Out of Cherry Grove Baptist Church, the primary mission that we are performing currently, because this is a hurricane, not a tornado, is distribution of goods. A hurricane does a moderate amount of damage over a very large area, or a tornado does a severe amount of damage in a very small area. Appalachia is great at a lot of things. It's not great at hurricanes because they are literally unprecedented in Appalachia. And when you overlay a hurricane over the top of the topography in Appalachia, things get very, very complicated. So the primary mission that Grindstone has been fulfilling in Appalachia, Eastern Tennessee, and Western North Carolina is distribution of goods, food, water, fuel, medicine, med calls through our medical professionals, initially search and rescue and cadaver dogs, air missions, and to a much lesser extent, debris and SAW teams. So the damage profile of a hurricane is different. And because of the topography, there's a massive amount of flooding that took place in this area, and there's a massive amount of isolation. Again, debris management is predominantly what Grindstone does, especially after tornadoes, but this was a hurricane. Now, doing an aerial survey in a helicopter, I observed over 60 different places on the mountaintops where there was definitely tornadic damage, myself personally. And for context, this is Grindstone's 46th deployment in 5.5 years, and I myself have been doing disaster relief for 19 years. So I know what tornado damage looks like versus hurricane damage versus flooding. Over 60 mountaintops that had tornadic damage on top of them. Does that indicate weather modification? Probably, in my experience. I can't say definitively because in the intelligence cycle, we have to rightly divide between what we think and what we know. And I don't know, but I definitely think, okay? So over 60 different mountaintops with tornadic damage on them is surveyed by my own eyes in a helicopter, in addition to the damage caused by the hurricane and the significant rainfall that turned into flooding, which turned into mudslides and 30-foot walls of mud, wiping entire towns and villages off the map, especially in Western North Carolina. That being said, the local populace, and to a lesser extent, the reporting, both national mainstream news media and to a much greater extent, social media, individual reporting coming out, has made most of this damage appear as if it is the end of the world as we know it. Now, taking nothing away from the people who lost everything, on a strictly a damage scale, just a damage scale, this is a 1.5 out of 10. But it's a widespread 5 states, 1.5 out of 10. I have seen far worse damage with my own eyes. You haven't lived until you've seen one house stacked on top of another house like a club sandwich, and the toothpick is a Peterbilt semi that's been driven through it. And that's just Tuesday. That's one house on one block. And that happened in Rolling Fork, Mississippi, after an EF4, initially classified as an EF4 tornado, and then upgraded to an EF5. That's just Tuesday. That's just what a tornado looks like. So on a damage scale alone, 1.5 out of 10. But a very widespread 1.5 out of 10. Now, we also have to rightly divide between relief and recovery. Relief is short-term sustainment of life. Food, water, shelter, medicine, warming, keeping people warm, thermoregulation. Warm in the winter, cool in the summer. And then recovery is the long-term recovery effort to put things back together again. Grindstone is a disaster relief organization. We are a nationally registered 501c3. We have the same authority as the American Red Cross, but we are privately funded. We don't bill the homeowner, we don't bill the municipality, we don't bill the state, and we don't bill the federal government, which means nobody gets to tell us what to do. Which means typically, government at all levels doesn't really like us, and that's okay, because I'm not here for them to like us. I'm here to love people in the model of Messiah, to be his hands and feet. And so we work directly with property owners, not the county, not the state, not the federal government. But on this particular storm, we are authorized to operate in the state of Tennessee by the Secretary of State of the state of Tennessee and the governor's office. So while we don't need their permission, we are authorized to be there, and we have been there since 26 hours after the storm. We are still there now, even though I am back in Oklahoma because I have more pastoral duties to perform here. And when I finish here in Oklahoma, I will rotate back to Tennessee and Western North Carolina. So the relief effort is shifting to a recovery effort. And so what that means for us is that SAW teams and heavy equipment aren't really needed. I have SAW teams and heavy equipment coming out of my ears. And bless you, every one of you who has shown up and donated your time, volunteered your time, your equipment, your fuel, your bank account to come love your neighbor as yourself. We have plenty, P for plenty, way more than we need. Because while the disaster is widespread, it's a 1.5 out of 10. If you want to serve, we need people who will serve on the distribution side, logistics, truck drivers, pickup trucks, box trucks, people at the fob taking orders. See, we are, when I say distribution, we are Amazon Prime for hill people. You tell me what you need, and I will have it to your doorstep in 24 hours. That is what we are doing now. That is the mission, predominantly distribution. It's not debris management. It's not SAW teams. It's not heavy equipment. It's Amazon for hill people. That is what we are doing. If you want to serve in that capacity, please email serve@grindstoneministries.com. serve@grindstoneministries.com. If you are in the disaster affected area, firsthand account, and you need help, not I heard, not somebody said, not I saw on Twitter or X or TikTok or Instagram or somebody post on Facebook, not that. You personally in the disaster affected areas of Western North Carolina or Eastern Tennessee, you need help. Please email needs@grindstoneministries.com. needs@grindstoneministries.com. Please hold all questions until the end. I need zero distractions right now. This is one of the most important pieces of content I've ever made because we're very quickly going to transition to all the things that I have personally observed that make this particular storm very odd. Very odd. And again, as a baseline, this is Grindstone's 46th deployment in 5.5 years, and I've been.
This is very important, guys. This is why I wanted us all to watch this together.
And this is not normal. Now, governmental players in this area. You have the local government, which in this case is at the county level. The counties have mayors, not the towns. You also have myriad churches, most of which are good people, good leadership, trying to love their neighbors themselves, some of which are not. Some of which are basically an extension of the political arm in the county. And I disdain that, just to be on the record. You have state emergency management, state DOT, state law enforcement. You have the federal government, predominantly arms of DHS, Department of Homeland Security, because FEMA is one of 19 agencies, Federal Emergency Management Agency is one of 19 agencies under the banner of DHS. And not only has FEMA been observed in the area, but other DHS agencies have been observed in the area as well. And then you have the DOD, the Department of Defense. 82nd, 101st, American or Army National Guard. You've got a lot of just rando units out there. That's the governmental side of things, and bureaucrats from the local volunteer assistant fire chief up to, you know, top dog for FEMA in the area. And you never know who it is that you're up against. But I will tell you that all those storms have ever worked. Has never helped. And it has been accomplished in spite of the government, not because of it. This one's different. it appears as if, again, rightly dividing between what I think and what I know, it appears as if they are working against the recovery. And we'll get into that in a moment. Now, another sign that we're moving from relief to recovery is that air missions have gone from literally rescuing babies and old women.
Did you hear that?
And sling loading supplies into isolated areas to airdropping Pop-Tarts. Okay, so that gives you an idea of the gravity of the situation. Again, observe this with my own eyes. We're going to airdrop Pop-Tarts. That's not insulin. That's not oxygen. That's not life-saving medical equipment. That's not extracting isolated personnel. That's not people in dire need. We're airdropping Pop-Tarts. Okay, so op tempo has changed. Priorities have changed. And again, Grindstone's primary mission is debris management, SAW teams, and heavy equipment. We have hauled less debris on this entire deployment thus far than we did in one day, our slowest day, in Barnesville, Oklahoma, which was an EF3 tornado, small localized tornado. Okay? So, when it comes to the scope is very large, 5 states, but the impact, and again, taking nothing away from the people who lost everything, it is not chaos actual. It is not the end of the world as we know it. It's a 1.5 out of 10 when it comes to a damage assessment. Okay. Now, let's switch gears to oddities. Mark time, 15:24. Please share this show with somebody you love. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. This is the part that's super important that needs to get out, but I had to lay that baseline first. By the way, to all my brothers and sisters in the preparedness space that are producing content around lessons learned from Hurricane Helene, I will have that content coming as well from a boots on the ground standpoint with my observations. And I say this in love. I know some of y'all were out there helping people, but most of y'all weren't. The reporting that's coming out, including the social media reporting, most of it's wrong. Most of it's wrong. And so I would be very careful to draw any lessons learned from Hurricane Helene unless you've been there yourself. Okay? Now, oddities. I got a whole whiteboard of them. In fact, go ahead and take a screenshot, and I'll just go ahead and say right now, I'm not suicidal, and I didn't kill myself. Here, microphone's in the way. Screenshot that. Okay? Where shall we begin? There's a town, or more like a village, in Little Germany, outside of Jonesboro, Tennessee. It had 70 homes. It's now down to 40 individuals. It was 42, but this village was cut off and isolated by the storm. Flooding wiped the road out. It was 42 and now it's 40 because very interesting study, detached study in the psychology of SHTF. 2 people committed suicide. One was definitely a suicide, the other one's questionable because they didn't want to play anymore. They lost the will to live. This community was isolated from everything, and their only line to the outside world for the first, I believe it was 7 days, was a 5-watt Baofeng radio. That's it. So if you don't know commo, you better learn commo. We began running supplies overland, packing them in. There's footage of this on my channel. Tennessee Department of Transportation was not going to rebuild their road. They were just going to leave them isolated, cut off. We filmed content, and then a local showed up with a track hoe and started running loads and dump trucks of rock and dirt to them. At which point, TDOT decided, no, we'll rebuild the 400 meters of road. We will issue a contract to Summers Contracting for $2 million to build 400 meters of road. Okay, whatever. And they'll have the road up in 4 days so that people can get in and out of Little Germany. Okay, deal. You guys handle it. Yeah, that number's now 3 to 4 weeks to get the road back up. Little Germany is cut off. Politicians, air missions over Little Germany. We were flying air missions into Little Germany with our helicopter. What's up, Dusty and Kyle? You guys are amazing. But then, all of a sudden, the airspace over Little Germany was changed to military airspace only, military aircraft only. And they put 60s on it to service Little Germany. Except instead of stopping, landing, offloading supplies, they were just doing flyovers. When they did land, they flew local, state, and federal politicians into Little Germany to promise everything to their face. Oh, we're going to take care of you, whatever we can do. But listen, we're out of funding. We'll find the funding, but we're going to take care of you. But then they didn't. They didn't drop supplies. They didn't drop med. They didn't drop commo. These people were completely cut off. And then, oh, by the way, these same politicians are hosting what they literally call secret meetings every Thursday. Where in said secret meeting, where I was invited to one, big mistake, they're sitting there talking about Little Germany, bad-mouthing it to each other. What are we going to do about Little Germany? Ah, whatever, who cares? Two-faced politicians. And I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm here to help people and love people, and I answer to nobody but the creator of the universe. And we're here for the preservation of life. I don't care about small-town politics. I don't care whatever backstory was predating Little Germany. These people were fearfully and wonderfully created in the image of their creator. And it's a shame that I got to drive 801 miles to love my neighbor as myself when you live there. And you're pandering for political reasons. Little Germany, I think, has been isolated because underneath Little Germany and the surrounding areas are seams of lithium. Now, adjacent to Little Germany is an area called Bumpus Cove. Bumpus Cove, by the way, anybody within the sound of my voice in the area needs to be taking water samples and soil samples and sending them to independent labs, not the state labs. Although I would recommend you take 3 or 4 samples, send one to the state lab, and then send the remainder to independent labs so you can compare what the state lab is saying, or have they been bought off, against what the independent labs are saying. They're already testing wells in Bumpus Cove because TDEC, Tennessee Department of Environmental Quality, learned about a decade ago that the water in Bumpus Cove was trash because people were getting sick, really sick, strange cancers, goiters, boils, weird looking deer running through the area. Massive amounts of heavy metal in the soil of Bumpus Cove already. Now, the river that washed past Little Germany and into Bumpus Cove and continued on down from there has chemical plants washed into it. All kinds of cadavers, all kinds of dead animals. PVC manufacturing plant. Nuclear fuels. Repeat, nuclear fuels. Rumit, at least one person who was working in that area was admitted to the hospital for radiation sickness. Rumit, unconfirmed, working on confirming it. Underneath that, oh, and the land actual in that area, Little Germany, Bumpus Cove, is owned by a mining company. Now, North Carolina, and to a lesser extent Tennessee, Eastern Tennessee, are very much so involved in the Green New Deal, green energy. They want lithium to make batteries for cars. I'm not looking at super chats right now. I'm not looking at comments right now. Do not send anything else to 104 Cherry Grove, please. Do not send anything else to 104 Cherry Grove. Coordinate everything through grindstoneministries.com, and I'm not going to be distracted by the chat right now. I cannot. All super chats, all comments, hold them till the end. A mining company owns that whole area, Little Germany, Bumpus Cove. And the lithium underneath the soil seems to be the predicate for what appears to be a federally enforced land grab. I think. I do not know, because this is way bigger than me. Now, speaking of federally enforced land grab, confirmed by our people on the ground, I have pics. Border Patrol, SRT, is doing security for FEMA. Not everywhere. Here's a pic. Okay? Screenshot that too if you want to. If it'll focus. It's trying to. Not everywhere for FEMA, just in areas of western North Carolina, where FEMA is running up to 30 minivans filled with FEMA agents who deny to be FEMA, even though they have FEMA windbreakers. So are they actually FEMA who's denying to be FEMA? Or are they not FEMA, but they have FEMA windbreakers as cover for action, going into areas where entire towns were wiped off the map with cadaver dogs? Rumit, the cadaver dogs are hitting on entire valleys, not just one area, because entire towns were wiped off the map. I talked to one woman who was the only survivor of the 60-plus homes that were in her holler that were wiped away by a 30-foot wall of mud that slid down the mountain. There are 12 people in her home. She's the only one that survived, and she's the only survivor of that entire holler. And the whole place just looks like a pile of mud. The official death count is 213 bodies. I spoke to one coroner in one county that had 1,200 bodies stacked in reefer trailers. Spoke to local emergency management that said they were stacking ambulances with body bags like cordwood in the back of them. One location in Swannanoa, North Carolina, went through 10 to 12,000 body bags. And Rumit, National Guard bulldozers, are what's pushing those areas flat. There are thousands of bodies in the river and underneath the mud. This is all what has come across our intel desk at our talk, at our fob, not what the internet has said. So not only has Border Patrol SRT been observed in the area, lots of other rando, very interesting security agencies are in the area. Now, that being said, this area houses the nuclear fuels for our nuclear arsenal. Shh, don't tell anyone. As well as manufactures all the RDX for our artillery shells. Shh, don't tell anyone. As well as is incredibly rich in lithium and gypsum and silica, which is required for the Green New Deal, as well as the AI revolution. Again, the river is dangerous. We have been telling our people, our volunteers at Grindstone Ministries, don't get in the river, do not pull water from the river for any application, and stay out of the silt, stay out of the mud, because the ground was contaminated before we got there. It's definitely contaminated now. Repeat, you have to, if you are in the area, You have to be taking soil samples, document when they were taken, where they were taken, and take soil samples 6 inches below the surface and 24 inches below the surface, and take multiple samples from the same location, and send 1 to the state for testing, and 2 or 3 to other independent labs so you can compare contrast the results, soil and water. There are already myriad monitoring wells in the area because the area was already polluted. People are already getting sick there. And so these particular areas, Little Germany, Bumpus Cove, and others, I believe, are simply being abandoned. There's already reports they're being abandoned because they want what's underneath the ground. And there are already reports from my guys in the field that people are driving around trying to buy up the land, and in some cases are buying up the land pennies on the dollar because it's been destroyed. The Forest Service, many impromptu roads have been cut in for access to cut off communities. The Forest Service has come along and said that they were going to take their dozers in there, push those roads in to make them even more passable so that supplies can pass. And instead what they did was say, nope, these roads are too dangerous. These are for military and law enforcement use only. No civilian organizations, no civilians, including the residents, are allowed to use them. Further isolating the people who are stuck up on the sides of these mountains. Coincidence, I'm sure. Again, critical airspace for resupply of stranded individuals was made military airspace only. And there's tons now of military aircraft in the area, but they're not running resupply missions. They're not sling loading. They're not dropping in supplies. They're not providing goods and services. They're patrolling airspace. They're also flying down the riverbeds real slow. And the rumor has been, well, they're looking for cadavers. I don't think they are. I think they're sniffing. And Monkey Works, if you're out there, would love to collab with you on this. Somebody please send this to Monkey Works. Get at me. Shoot me an email. You can find me at bearindependent.com. Because there's not just UH-60s, there are MH-60s in the area. Refueling equipment sticking out of these helicopters. Multiple occasions, air quote doctors with no doctor's bag, no credentials, no ID have showed up to wanting to be taken into these remote communities to administer air quote people. I personally have run off 2 of them, 1 doctor, air quote doctor, twice. You are not welcome here. If I see you again, we're gonna have problems. Don't come back. Let me see your ID. Well, I don't have an ID. You're a doctor. Well, oh, I left all my stuff at home. What? No, but you just have a bag full of vaccines, air quote, you want to go give people? Negative. And multiple reports in other isolated communities and other FOBs of that happening as well. FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, is taking credit for work that is being performed by NGOs and the locals. FEMA in Washington County, Tennessee, where our FOB is located, has listed their #1 distribution site located at 104 Cherry Grove. That's us. We don't work for FEMA, we don't work with FEMA. So we contacted them and said, take our name off of your bullshit. They did. But they also, in North Carolina, have been driving around with a minivan filled with people that had, jeans, work boots, gloves, safety vests, hard hats, driving up to areas where people are already working with a camera crew from 60 Minutes, hopping out, doing photo shoots and shooting short snippets of video. When they get what they want, they hop back in the van and drive away to make it appear as if the response to this storm is being performed by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. It is not. FEMA is sitting at their FOB, at their desk, confirmed by us, because we do intel stuff, playing video games in the midst of all of this. There are, shifting gears, hundreds of condemned homes, and they should be condemned because they were flooded by this mud from the river that is incredibly unsafe. Hundreds of condemned homes. But the fact that those homes were condemned was not communicated by emergency management personnel. So the property owners then went into these homes, mucked all of that toxic mud out, opened the walls, pulled the insulation, began installation, new drywall, new flooring, started putting their home back together again, with emergency management knowing it's just a matter of time before FEMA comes in and bulldozes those homes anyway. It's part of why Grindstone has had very little debris to haul, because I am not going to do FEMA's dirty work. And it should have been communicated by both FEMA and the emergency management organizations that these homes are condemned. But because both of those groups, organizations, lack a pair of balls, they didn't tell the homeowners. So the homeowners have been rebuilding their homes that are going to be bulldozed anyway.
All right, gentlemen. So, all right, guys. So that's cutting edge news from Bear Independent. We're just trying to do our part and share some of the information for Bear, who's actually there on the ground doing forward operations there in North Carolina. So let's transition to another video. First of all, Jeremiah, do you have any comments about some of that shocking information that he's revealing? Thousands of people and the secrecy around it. This is screaming cover up. This is screaming, you know, something more than meets the eye. What do you think?
I think it's sick. I mean, if this is what's really going on, and I know Bear Independent as a very truthful man, I mean, he's on the ground. I mean, it's just mind-blowing. I mean, you would never think that this would be happening.
I sure hope that Bear Independent isn't going to be like Rob.
Yeah. So we pray for his safety, for sure.
Yeah, he's exposing some very, very important information and dangerous information. You see, he started off that little tirade there with going, "I did not commit suicide." Well, when we talk about things like this, it really does draw attention to that very powerful that don't want attention. Here's another, which is something very interesting. Okay, so this video is a Jason A clip compiling some recent political comments and world events.
Et qu'il s'agisse de terrorisme, de cette grande pandémie ou d'autres chocs, il faut la combattre quand elle arrive, avec ce qu'elle a de profondément inattendu, implacable.
As we know, the French president is often compared to Jupiter, the Roman god, in part for his kind of distance from journalists and from the people. Well, now he has descended from Mount Olympus.
Look at the front page of Libération. Must admit, they got very creative today. You can see, this one you have to understand a little bit. Essentially, lots of papers, and Macron himself have compared Macron to the king of all gods, Jupiter. And so what you can see here is, it's Manuel Jupiter, so Manupiter, they coined a new word there. It's a very good portmanteau and a very good drawing there. Jupiter with his tridents there, I don't know, bolts of lightning, ready to get things done. But Libé is worried about this Jupiterian president, worried that public debate will be atrophied while Macron is building this myth of a new savior of France.
Discussing his latest book, The Last President of Europe, Emmanuel Macron's race to revive France and save the world.
And likewise, we have to build a new international order, and this is the biggest challenge of our time.
We need a single global order.
He's the choice of a country desperate for change, a politician who's neither left nor right, part of the French establishment yet never before elected, a fresh face who served in the outgoing government. So who is Emmanuel Macron?
Exudes an air of youthful optimism. At 44, you are the senior leader of Europe. Is that a comfortable fit?
Yes, because you can have both experience and energy.
The President of France, Emmanuel Macron, will also meet with President Trump in Paris. Macron's calling for a new European army, pan-European army, to defend against Russia, China, and America.
I've been warning for 20 years. They wanted to build a European army. They actually want some of these leaders to destroy NATO.
Why does Europe feel it needs an army? We've got NATO, and all of these countries have their own standing national army. So what would be the point of a European-wide army?
But this guy is stuck with an out-of-date ideology. He wants to build a United States of Europe, and you cannot do that when people have different languages and countries have different histories.
As of now, 9 countries have joined the French effort. Belgium, the United Kingdom, Germany and Denmark, the Netherlands, Estonia, Finland, Spain and Portugal.
He tells us, secondly, that this nation will rise in a time of unprecedented difficulties in the world. In fact, both Matthew and Luke speak at length about that when they talk about there'll be a time of wars and rumors of wars. There'll be nations rising against nation. There'll be great earthquakes, famines, pestilences, he says, in various places, and fearful events. Nations, he said, will be in anguish and in perplexity, and there'll be the roaring of the sea. I just think it's kind of interesting, because as we read in the opening, it says, I saw the beast coming out of the sea. He had 10 horns, 7 heads, and doesn't use any of them, and 10 crowns on his horns. In chapter 17, he explains it to us. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who will, for 1 hour, receive authority as kings along with the beast. Now, all of this is kind of interesting, but it does basically tell us that the final world empire will be composed of 10 nations. In fact, Daniel and also Revelation tells us it's going to be a composite or a confederation of 10 supra-nations. In other words, not just simply nation states, but supra-states. That is, governments and countries that now may have separate boundaries will be bound together in a new kind of organizational hub.
Macron is sort of known for splurging on makeup. Over the course of his first 3 months in office, he's already spent 26,000 euros on his personal makeup artist. Oh my gosh.
2 years later, Hollande gave him the prestigious position of Minister of Economy.
That's so much makeup.
But by now, Hollande's public approval rating had fallen to historic lows. Macron threw himself into a plan to loosen economic regulation with testy exchanges in Parliament. But the reforms were disliked, and the legislation had to be forced through Parliament, sparking violent protest. Macron increasingly criticized the government, but still enjoyed the president's support. Then, last year, he launched his own political movement, En Marche, or On the Move, thrusting him into the national spotlight.
He's really come out of nowhere. 3 years ago, Emmanuel Macron was barely known to the general public, and here he is today on the verge of becoming president.
Emmanuel Macron wants to put Europe at the center of the world, again.
Following America's $90 billion aid package to Ukraine, the French president said Europe mustn't rely entirely on the US for its protection. With 3 years left on his second term, Macron outlined his vision for a more assertive European Union on the global stage.
We have to be clear about the fact that our Europe today is mortal. It could die. It could die, and that depends solely on our choices.
but faced with intense skepticism from a majority of EU countries, for now the project remains one of cooperation rather than of combination. Eastern countries so far preferring to place their trust in NATO under American protection. Eurosceptic nationalist movements throughout the EU also doing their part to cut short Macron's ambitions.
A reaction to the French president's comments 2 days before the anniversary of October 7th that shipments of weapons to Israel for use in Gaza should be stopped, while countries pushed for a ceasefire.
But Macron also criticized the hypocrisy of some nations calling for a ceasefire, while also supplying the weapons that are enabling the war to continue.
If we call for a ceasefire, what's consistent is to not provide weapons of war. And I think that those who supply them cannot call for a ceasefire every day and continue to supply them.
Meanwhile, some analysts criticized his position as lacking coherence, on the one hand pushing for a ceasefire and a two.
So I'm just going to pause it there because our next video transitions directly from that topic, which is the concept of UN being caught in the crossfire between Israel and Hezbollah and the engagement in Lebanon currently. So check this out. And of course that video we just watched is breaking down this identity and role of Emmanuel Macron on the world stage. You know, finally, you know, another possible Antichrist persona. No longer Donald Trump, right, Jeremiah?
Right.
Check this out.
And Hezbollah and the UN was once again caught in the crossfire. It comes as Israeli forces launch an air raid on central Beirut. Fox's Greg Palcott has more from northern Israel.
Fighting between Israeli forces and Hezbollah spreading across southern Lebanon on Friday. For the second time in 48 hours, the UN peacekeeping force in Lebanon says a round of explosions hit its headquarters. 2 UNIFIL workers were reportedly injured. The Israeli military admitted to opening fire in the area on Thursday, but says it ordered the peacekeepers to seek shelter.
This severe impediment to the mission's freedom of movement within the area of operation has limited the mission's monitoring and reporting ability.
The strikes come as Israel ramps up its air campaign against Hezbollah. Overnight strikes on central Beirut hit 2 residential buildings, killing more than 20 people and injuring dozens more in what was one of the deadliest attacks on the city in more than a year of war.
We lived through the war and the previous wars. It was not like what we are seeing and hearing now.
The region remains on high alert following Iran's massive ballistic missile strike on Israel last week. The Israeli security Thursday to discuss a possible response. Still, the Biden administration says it remains hopeful about a possible ceasefire deal.
Parts of Lebanon, with more evacuation orders issued for southern towns. It comes as Israel says Hezbollah fired more than 320 projectiles across the border over the 24 hours.
Meanwhile, there are growing concerns for UN peacekeepers working in Lebanon, with the UN saying 5 soldiers have now been injured in the past week. Our correspondent Natalie Whiting filed this report from Jerusalem.
The death toll in Lebanon since the hostilities started has now risen to more than 2,250 people, including 5 killed in recent airstrikes. Several parts of Lebanon have been targeted, including parts of Beirut and a town in the north that hadn't previously been struck. Israel's military has released fresh evacuation orders for more than 20 villages in the south, many of which are already almost empty following earlier strikes. Israel says the evacuations are necessary for the safety of residents because of increased activity from the Iranian-backed Hezbollah, saying the group is hiding weapons to launch attacks on Israel. People here in Israel have been marking the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur, and the Israel military says over that period more than 320 projectiles were fired by Hezbollah towards the country. The Middle East remains on high alert for further escalation, awaiting Israel's response to an Iranian missile barrage from the 1st of October. The Iranian parliament speaker has been visiting Lebanon and went to the site of an Israeli strike in Beirut, saying Iran was willing to send aid under the supervision of the Lebanese government.
I'm particularly carrying a message from the Supreme Leader for the Lebanese people, with assurances that, in these difficult conditions, the Islamic Republic of Iran shall stand with Lebanon's nation and government and the resistance in all areas.
Israeli airstrikes and ground operations have also been continuing in Gaza. Palestinian health authorities say that more than 150 people have been killed in the north of the region, around the area of Jabalia, over the past week.
Officials in Gaza say at least 130 people have been killed in the operation, which is focused on Jabalia, the biggest refugee camp in the territory. Meanwhile, concerns are growing about the UN's ability to deliver a second round of to children in Gaza due to the increased fighting.
Oh man, so many V words in this episode I'm gonna have to edit out. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Good old Dabu's got us an update here on a cyber attack that hit recently regarding Iran's nuclear facilities. Check this out.
What's up, guys? D7 back at you. We have some big events surrounding Iran going down, and there could be some blowback. There could be some events go down here in this country directly tied to it. If you haven't noticed, they've been telegraphing something with Trump and Iran this whole time, and now they're saying a massive cyber attack has happened inside of Iran, and that this has crippled all types of different sectors within Iran. Apparently, all three branches of government are affected, and they have targeted their nuclear facilities, which is huge. You really, in terms of cyber attacks, can't go any higher than this. They've hit all their infrastructure, and they're hurt pretty bad right now. So I would expect to see some kind of retaliation events here in the next week or so, and this is all leading right up to election time here in America. But this is serious. This is one of the biggest cyber attacks to ever hit Iran, and it's major. So, you know, no one's claiming responsibility yet, but it's pretty obvious who's on what side at this point.
All right, guys. So, little update there from Dabu on a cyber attack that could have repercussions in the coming weeks from Iran. Jeremiah, what is your overall opinion on all of these crazy events that are happening here leading up to the election in November?
Well, I think it's all the distraction. Like I was telling Lindsay right when those two hurricanes hit, I was like, isn't it really convenient that both the states that were hit, or the majority of the people are red, like they're on the right? So if they can't control the weather, wouldn't it just go through, you know, red zones?
Exactly, man. Somebody needs to make a meme or like an AI generated image and post it and share it with us of Kamala Harris riding a hurricane towards North Carolina going like, "Wee-hoo, I'm gonna win this one." You know?
Yeah.
Man, that's about as cringy to think about as oh man, I can literally think of nothing else worse. So
it's all political. It's all political, and it's sad that like real lives are in jeopardy when they're playing this politic game. It just infuriates me.
And overshadowing these petty American politics that we're all being distracted from, right? Here's worldwide BRICS nations rippling waves across the world, affecting those who are under the tyranny of the petrodollar system. Check this out.
Said on Friday at a press conference in Turkmenistan, a country in Central Asia, that a new world order is necessary, where wealth is distributed more fairly and the voice of every nation is heard.
In the current difficult situation where the world is facing unprecedented threats, when international relations are entering the era of deep-rooted changes, when we're building the new world order that reflects the variety of the whole planet. And this natural process is irreversible, that Russia advocates for maximally wide international discussion on the cooperation in the multipolar world that is being built today. We're open to discussing issues of building the new world order with all of our friends, partners, and like-minded friends.
Russia's president, Vladimir Putin, has met with his Iranian counterpart, President Masoud Pezeshkian, for the first time. The two leaders held face-to-face talks at a regional summit in Turkmenistan, where they joined a number of heads of state from other Central Asian and Arab states. The Kremlin said the Russian and Iranian presidents discussed mutual relations as well as the situation in the Middle East. The meeting comes amid soaring tensions in the region.
Russia has increasingly been inviting Iranian officials to events. Analysts say it's an attempt to show that Moscow is not isolated. But it's not clear if Russia will back Iran in the event of a full-scale war with Israel.
que a la luz de todo lo que está sucediendo en Oriente Medio, la comunidad internacional cese de exportar armas al gobierno de Israel. Creo que esto es de urgencia y este es un llamamiento que voy a hacer desde el primer instante al conjunto de la comunidad internacional. El cesar de exportar armas al gobierno.
Russia is increasingly close to the anti-American forces in the region, this being Iran, its proxies and the Assad regime in Syria. In fact, Russian military base in Syria was nearly attacked by Israel missiles, and many have been speculating whether this can lead to further escalations.
For the last year, Israel has been fighting a war on what is now 7 fronts. And there's one thing that is in common to all of those fronts, whether it's Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and much more. The one thing in common is the revolutionary Islamic government in Tehran, which has been subjugating the people of Iran since 1979, and whose regional ambitions have been out in the open for a very long time, and absolutely explicit at the moment. They complain about Israel being a colonizer state. The Iranians are colonizing across the whole region, whether it's Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and they are in a war which the regime in Iran says includes the desire to wipe Israel off the map. This has been their desire for decades, since 1979.
Well, what we've seen over the course of a year is international condemnation. Allies of yours, the United States, the UK, France, Germany, these countries coming out, and they've stood with Israel for decades, and now they're saying Israel has gone too far. When you say that, you know, destroying Hamas or reaching some kind of victory, even if they are launching 1 or 2 rockets, they're still launching rockets, they're still there.
Israel is fighting a war on behalf of the world against the craziest, most fanatic jihadist ideology and terrorists on earth. We are fighting Iran on behalf of the world, because imagine that Iran acquires a nuclear weapon. Europe's going to be under fire. If we let them get away with it, let me be as clear as possible. They're going to do this in the UK, they're going to do it in New York, they're going to do it in Paris, they're going to use citizens to hide behind. This will become the world's plague. Israel is fighting your war, and instead of sitting on the side benches and giving us criticism all day, the world should back us in defeating this horrible, savage terror.
Well, ties between Russia and Iran have strengthened since the Kremlin sent troops into Ukraine in 2022, with Tehran widely believed to be supplying Moscow with weapons.
And the U.S. also believes that the Islamic country has transferred short-range ballistic missiles to Russia.
Relations with Iran are a priority for us, and they are developing very successfully.
We have the opportunity to help each other in many areas. Points and positions in the world are much closer to each other of others.
Iran is at its most advanced in history. It's acquired uranium in an amount for 10 nuclear bombs. This is crazy. They're building the bomb already, the bomb itself. So we're in the 11th hour. I would say strike the nuclear facilities, strike the regime.
Will Israel do that alone? No. But it seems to me, as I say in the New York Post today, that it's absolutely incumbent on Israel's allies to help it stop these theocratic fascists in Iran from getting the world's most dangerous weapons. And if it has to be Israel alone, I suppose it will be, but it shouldn't be.
Now, these countries include the likes of Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, which all host American troops on their ground. The report further said that in their message to Washington, these nations have expressed their reluctance in letting Israel or the United States use their airspace for any military operations against Iran.
So as you can see there, the formation of a group of nations outside of the world order as defined by the United States and her interests. And so we're seeing this is happening concurrent to the change up of the American persuasion here because of our own political decision making. And so it's just a really interesting time to be alive. And I'm sharing a lot of these different videos just to, you know, kind of make an archive of the concurrent discussion as we experience these different things. Any thoughts to add, Opa or Jeremiah?
No, I just thought it was very insightful. You, Opa?
I think the world's getting very confusing.
Yep.
Well, let's just keep our eyes and ears open, and here's another topic that I think is very interesting, something we've covered in the past, which is Boeing is laying off thousands of workers worldwide. So this is something that has just come down the chute, and something that I find interesting. As world tensions escalate, we see that there's a constriction on travel between countries, and so to me it's kind of a red flag when you're seeing airlines cut back on so many people. It's almost as if they don't expect you to be traveling in the near future. Watch this clip.
Space company Boeing has announced it will be laying off 10% of its workforce. The cuts will affect around 17,000 employees and come as 32,000 workers have been on strike since September, costing the company millions of dollars every single day. News Nation's Caitlin Becker is here with more. Good morning, Caitlin. So what has the company cited as the reason for this layoff of 17,000 people?
A lot of people, Hannah, and the hits just kind of keep coming at Boeing. CEO and President Kelly Ortberg has only been on the job for about 2 months, and they've been rough ones. Half of that time, he's had to deal with that crippling labor strike that Hannah just mentioned, reportedly costing the aerospace giant $1 billion a month. And the company is continuing to deal with production issues and major financial challenges. Ortberg telling staff in a memo Friday the company is in a difficult position and that, quote, structural changes were needed to maintain a competitive edge over the long term. Now, these job cuts will take place in the coming months, and they're going to run the gamut. Executives, managers, and assembly line employees will all be impacted. Some 170,000 workers are employed by Boeing across the globe, but the lion's share of them work at manufacturing facilities here in the U.S. Now, along with the layoffs, the airplane manufacturer is also delaying the launch of its largest airliner, the new 777X jet, and is going to discontinue the 767 cargo plane. Now, this announcement, just the latest in a setback for a company that has been dealing with issues for years. Now, one of the biggest issues we would be remiss not to talk about, we've reported on it extensively, it's the door panel that you see here. It blew off that Alaska Airlines flight mid-air. Thankfully, there were no serious injuries here, but an investigation found that the aircraft left the factory 2 months earlier without some of the bolts that it needed to hold that door plug in place. And of course, its space and defense business is also in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. The Boeing Starliner returned to Earth uncrewed last month after NASA deemed the spacecraft was unsafe, leaving 2 astronauts stranded on the International Space Station until February. And the problems just don't end there, Hannah. In a preliminary report on its third quarter earnings, the company revealing that it expects to incur losses close to $10 a share. That's a lot worse than analysts had forecast. They predict the company is going to burn through $3 billion in the quarter.
It just keeps getting worse for Boeing. There's another investigation I want to talk to you about into the crashes of 2 737 MAX jets. I remember that story. It led to the deaths of 346 people. Now, for our viewers, a judge heard arguments Friday, but has not yet accepted Boeing's guilty plea. So, Caitlin, what do we know about that case?
You know, Hannah, this plea isn't going over well with those who were impacted by the accident. Boeing agreed to plead guilty and pay a fine for conspiracy to commit fraud in connection with those MAX jets. But the relatives of the hundreds who died, they want the plea agreement thrown out and they want Boeing to go on trial. Now, the judge hasn't revealed which way they're leaning yet, but after listening to both sides, he did say there is a lot to think about and promised to make a ruling soon.
Okay, so like I said, there's a change-up happening with Boeing. Now, in regards to what we heard previously from Dabu, I have a clip here that reiterates on the vulnerability of today's systems. Online infrastructure is very important, and the way we interact with each other right now is even through the internet and online. And so check out this video, which is about a recent hack that might catch your attention. Here we go.
Information is power, and archives full of history are one of the most fundamental pieces of a civilization. And when archives are lost or altered, history then becomes lost or altered. And it only takes a generation or two to completely forget that history. So I mean, it is the utmost important thing, and that is why physical printed books are so important these days. I know most of you guys are not spending your evenings poring over history books in libraries, but I know that most of you guys see the value in having physical copies of history books. But in the digital era, there is another kind of source that does need to be protected. One that keeps a historical record of everything that has ever happened on the World Wide Web. And that source is called the Wayback Machine. And it is under attack. Before we dive into the story though, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and of course hit that notification bell to make sure that you never miss one of our episodes. So I first heard of this issue from my editors because we use the Wayback Machine all the time on this show to get information, to fact check things. So if something has been deleted or changed online, the Wayback Machine has a record of it. And this Wayback Machine is part of the Internet Archive. So for instance, if a famous article's title has been changed, we know. If a dictionary definition has been changed online, if Merriam-Webster changes the definition of a woman yet again, we know we have evidence. And this is so important because without a record of what something once was, it can become anything. And the lies can be endless, and the gaslighting can be endless, as all of us who live in the digital age very clearly know. And this is just incredibly, incredibly dangerous, hence the importance of archives. Anyway, we recently needed the Wayback Machine for something that we were doing in an episode. We were unable to access the site. And we quickly learned that the entire site was down after a hacker breached its walls and got access to over 31 records. And people online, rightfully so, started freaking out. One guy said, without the Internet Archive, so much would become lost. We're not talking about only the lost media either. Actual pieces of history would become lost forever. The moment the Internet Archive comes back, we have to support this website more than we ever have. Another person said, sad to see the Wayback Machine Internet Archive offline for much of the last week. This important research tool enables fact-checking using snapshots of old web pages. Is it a coincidence that the DDoS attack started recently in a time to impede fact-checking before the election? Just saying, it makes you wonder. Maybe this hacker just didn't want us to know that Kamala Harris was actually appointed the border czar and actually offered sex changes to illegal migrants, which, yes, is all online thanks to the Wayback Machine. The OG founder of the website who runs this nonprofit then posted an update over the week. He said, the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine resumed in a provisional read-only manner, so no save page now yet. Safe to resume, but might need further maintenance, in which case it will be suspended again. Please be gentle. And then he put the hyperlink more as it happens. Somebody commented and said, the Internet Archive is one of those things that you didn't realize you cared about until you suddenly can't access it anymore. Somebody said, the idea that so much of our digital history could just vanish is wild. Huge respect for bringing attention to this. It makes you realize how fragile the internet, I mean, the entire system is so fragile because you can change history with the click of a cursor, and then you can delete the entire thing that records that history with another click of a cursor. I mean, it hinges on so very little. Somebody else commented and said, the fact that not a single one of the big tech companies has come to help highlights how much of this is needed. They are truly willing to kill open access to knowledge for a quarter's profit of itself. The web's collective memory is stored in the servers of the Internet Archive. Legal battles threaten to wipe it all away. And you know, they are, in a way, in sort of a murky gray area. I mean, perhaps it's been that way since its inception, similar to WikiLeaks. And in the Wired article, they explain that a little more. They describe it this way, and they said, it is an essential tool for everything from legal research, particularly around patent law, to accountability journalism. There are other online archiving tools, but none of them touch the Internet Archive. It is, in short, a proof machine. So no wonder people want it gone. What makes the Internet Archive unique is its willingness to push boundaries in ways that do not. The Library of Congress also archives the web, but only after it is notified and often asks permission from the websites that it scrapes. But the Wayback Machine doesn't ask. It just does. Like we always tell young people that they should always act accordingly because everything on the internet is forever, and in this case, it literally is. And honestly, it's good that it is because again, you can change everything with the click of a cursor, so we need to have records of this. Now, of course, in March of 2020, during a certain something that people wanted censored, publishers turned up the heat on the Internet Archive. They wrote, for years, publishers ignored the Internet Archive's book scanning spree. Finally, during the pandemic, after the Internet Archive took one liberty too many with its approach to CDL, they snapped. And they wrote, in March of 2020, as schools and libraries abruptly shut down, they faced a dilemma. Demand for ebooks far outstripped their ability to loan them out under restrictive licensing deals, and they had no way of lending out books that existed only in physical form. In response, the Internet Archive made a bold decision. It allowed multiple people to check out digital versions of the same book simultaneously. It called its program the National Emergency Library. Quote, we acted at the request of librarians and educators and writers. But the publishers weren't too happy with that because obviously the Internet Archive was taking copies of their book that they had not authorized authorized and distributing it. And it's just wild that they would choose to go to court over this organization finding a solution in an extremely perilous time in history. And it also just, sounds alarms that it was during 2020 when so much information was being censored, and they obviously did not want the Internet Archive existing and having that information, but alas, that case moved forward. Now, they were also sued by music producers for making digital copies of their music, and just time and time again, they're going to court, and they always argue fair use. But last year, they ended up losing that case with the publishers, and they are still fighting with the producers, which could possibly go all the way up to the Supreme Court, which could decide the future of the Internet Archive and the Wayback Machine. But, guys, lawsuits are not the only problem that they're facing, because as the Internet becomes more and more advanced, as AI specifically increases, it is getting harder and harder for the Internet Archive to keep up and advance their tools along with AI. They are having trouble actually keeping records of everything that's going on now. And as I say that, it seems like this is just a cry out for Elon Musk, like he's probably the one who could figure out how to fix this. Like, it just seems like something that he would care about. So if there's any big tech company that's going to step in, it would probably be X. It would probably be Elon Musk. But the point is here, and the reason why I'm bringing this to all of your attention
and the point is that Elon Musk is our coming savior, is at least what she was saying. Jeremiah, did you have any comments? I mean, it's such a big deal if they're deleting the archives of the internet.
I think Charlie might have a quick word. I knew he was going to be here right when it came back. Yeah, I just think it's crazy. I've never used the Wayback Machine, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. But that's very interesting that they can control kind of what you see. I mean, but they've been doing that for a while now, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just their ability to control, distort, and censor the information that we pass down to the next generation, and that's the main significance of the topic. But what more pressing than possibly praying could now be illegal under some Scottish buffer zone rules? And the significance of this is when the application of AI plus the identity confirmation bias theology that's going around in today's world gets applied to the police state, you get situations like this, which are a little alarming. Check this out.
Welcome back. Now, I teased before the break what we were going to be talking about now. And, well, let's just get on with it, shall we? This is a subject very close to my heart. Residents are being told that being on private property is no bar to prosecution under new legislation. This is being brought in by the SNP, which took effect across Scotland last month, establishing 200-metre safe access zones around all abortion clinics. Now, residents in these zones have been warned that they could be in breach of the Abortion Services Act if they do anything that would cause harassment, alarm or distress to staff and patients, even if this activity is carried out in the privacy of their own home. Pro-life campaigners fear that praying in these zones will be considered an offence following the arrests of several activists for harassment and public order-related offences in England and Northern Ireland. Well, let's dig into this with Michael Phillips, who's from Christian Legal, who's a Christian Legal Centre lawyer. Michael, great surname, can I just say, and great religion as well. I'm one of your lot. But let's talk about this, because one would say, well, you know, surely it's a bit of a stretch.
Did you hear how she said that?
There's a 200-metre safe zone, and it happens to be that there's a residential property in this, and someone is quietly praying at home that they're going to have their collar felt by the police. That seems to be, to me, to be a far-flung fear. Yet the idea here for me that I find troubling is the fact that, once again, there's one religion in this country which the state wants to control. There's one religion in this country that the state is happy to kick in the groin. There's one religion in this country that has absolutely zero protections, seems to be regularly under fire, and it is our national religion which underpins our democracy and our cultural mores.
I totally agree, and I've been on to the SNP, the government, Scottish Government website this morning, and I thought that maybe this is a little bit of hyperbole from the press, but it just really isn't. I'm reading from the document itself, and it says that if someone does something in a private place, such as a private residence within the boundary of a safe access zone, that could be seen or heard in a public space, that are part of the zone, an offence could be committed, and that could include if you do it recklessly, that means you don't necessarily intend to do it, and it influences somebody's decision. And the problem is this, is that we know this isn't just some type of horror story that somebody's made up. It's been happening in England, and I've represented a couple of people, and there are other people who I haven't represented, but nonetheless they're being prosecuted, one of which is Adam Smith Connor, a veteran of the war in Afghanistan, on trial in Poole at the moment for the crime of silently praying for his dead son outside an abortion clinic in Bournemouth. Likewise, Isabel Vaughan-Bruce, who we're assisting, she too has been arrested on a number of occasions for that, praying silently. It's unbelievable, it's Orwellian, but unfortunately it's starting to happen. There is a real fear that that could happen. So that if you have a sign on your wall, maybe about life, maybe about Psalm 149, which talks about the fact that they even talks about the fact that he was knit together in his mother's womb. And if you had that in large letters outside your house, then potentially somebody goes past, they see it, they feel distressed, they feel as though they're being influenced. Then in those circumstances, they report you to the police, and then you could face criminal prosecution and a criminal record and a fine.
In the Scottish Islands, right? Anyways, very interesting. I mean, we see a distancing of the national identity of the United States with Christianity as a whole to a distancing between previously held close allies, the United States and Israel, and this is very significant. Watch this video as the U.S. threatens to withhold funding, kind of beckoning the UN and some of these other nations we've heard from previously in today's episode to enter into an agreement to kind of bring the United States along if we can get Israel to be coerced into following some of their wishes.
We have breaking news for you. This just into our newsroom. President Biden and his administration are apparently now warning Israel it must boost humanitarian aid into Gaza within 30 days or risk weapons funding. As I said, this is just into our newsroom. It is a developing story. We're going to have more for you as it comes in with more information. In the meantime, this is all happening while American troops are now on the ground to help with Israel's defense. Rebecca Castor has more on what U.S. troops will be doing there.
This is the most powerful anti-missile weapon used by the U.S. military, and it's on its way to Israel. It's called the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD, and it can destroy ballistic missiles launched from as close as 93 miles away.
The United States needs to maintain a military and security umbrella in the Middle East because it's a volatile and violent region, and we have interests and allies there.
But to operate the defensive weapon, Israel will need U.S. boots on the ground. The Pentagon says about 100 soldiers are on their way or have already arrived. As the U.S. helps shore up Israel's defenses, Hezbollah is launching more strikes from Lebanon, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is preparing to respond to Iran's large-scale attack earlier this month. The White House is urging Israel not to strike Iran's oil or nuclear facilities. Posting on X, the Prime Minister's office says, "We will listen to the opinions of the United States, but we will make our final decisions based on our national interests."
Israel's going to retaliate in the next couple of days. But the systems that America's promising, they're not going to get there in a couple of days. They come a couple of weeks later. So I think that Netanyahu is understanding Israel's going to defend itself by itself.
The Pentagon says the THAAD battery will be up and running in the near future, but declined to give specifics on its timeline. In Washington, Rebecca Castor.
All right, so we're seeing a shifting of weight of political power in that situation there. And this next video explains a little bit about how the shifting of information and power can control whole groups of people in a reflection of 1984's deceptive practices of subliminal mind control. Check this out.
Held one on subliminal communication technology, which was held in the year 1984 of all years, and put into the record was a Southern California law review document that mentioned several very interesting points. First, it notes that according to previously classified documents, the CIA was testing subliminal manipulation in movie theaters during the late 50s, and in a document on these studies speculated that subliminal projection can be utilized in such a way as to feature a visual suggestion such as obeyed deleted. So they were openly literally discussing putting the word obey into a subliminal, and they were openly doing it in movie theaters across the country, including one in Alexandria, Virginia in the late 50s, right around the same exact time that this national anthem sign-off would have been created. Obey deleted. What do you want to bet government was put in there?
That is pretty spooky that they redacted who they told people to obey, but that there was a command to obey.
It also says here that the Central Intelligence Agency has investigated the possibility of using subliminal communication to implant suggestions or commands to reduce a subject's resistance to hypnosis or to affect political outcomes. That's all stuff that's on record. And even this law review admits the extent of the CIA research is unknown. But they were saying obey something. They redacted whatever that was. I mean, people say that it's a hoax because subliminal messages don't work, so why would they do it anyway? And that's not even really the point. The point is that they were doing it at all in the first place. That's the point. But as far as it working or not working, obviously this was still going on at least up until the 80s, because Congress had a subcommittee hearing all about this. A meeting where, just by the way, they don't mention brainwave entrainment even one time, which was something that was coming into being at that time. So
because this stuff progressed over the years and became more sophisticated.
So Congress has a meeting about subliminals in the 80s, and they specifically don't mention entrainment. I think it's pretty red herring. Anyway, what is mentioned in the congressional subcommittee hearing that probably no one paid any attention to at all is the fact that throughout the 70s and during the 80s before this hearing, little black boxes were being put into stores that were playing subliminal, for example, anti-theft messages in one example to customers. And it cites a 1979 article out of Time magazine where it specifically talks about how they're using these little black boxes that mingle bland music with subliminal messages, an anti-theft message, I am honest, I will not steal, repeated rapidly 9,000 times an hour at very low volumes that are barely audible at all to shoppers, but register in some deep recess of the brain and apparently influence behavior. 50 department stores in the US and Canada had installed the devices to reduce shoplifting and employee theft. The black box inventor Hal C. Becker says, I see no reason why there won't be audio conditioning in the same way we now have air conditioning. They were also using these in people's workplaces, like in a real estate office. I love real estate. I will prospect for new listings for clients each and every day. Can you imagine? They're playing these things 9,000 times an hour subliminally to people where they work, where they shop.
That's the thing. Classic subliminal technology has been shown to increase sales profits or compliance with commands not to steal by a certain margin, a significant margin that makes it worth the expense and the trouble. Well, in a political system where people vote, a message to obey the authorities or obey the government might just be enough to keep a certain majority in power or a certain political policy rolling.
Ladies and gentlemen, this commercial is going to use subliminal advertising.
But much more significant than that is the fact that visual subliminals in a single frame of a movie or spliced between words, as we saw in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, has become a refined scientific targeting technique where they have a specific frequency and a specific audience in mind. They can layer signals underneath the visual and audio stuff that you watch on TV or in movies.
This guy, Hal Becker, by the way, founded a business out of Louisiana called the Behavioral Engineering Center. So just think for a second about what that means. Without trying to make this long video even longer, Becker has co-authored several papers and used to work directly with a neurosurgeon named Dr. Robert G. Heath. Heath, in the 40s, was researching ergot with the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, and by the 50s, he was doing psychosurgery and the implantation of electrodes to stimulate certain areas of a person's brain and control their moods and behavior using radio frequency. Was definitely on the record an MK Ultra doctor. A lot of those records were destroyed. there's not a way to prove everybody's involvement, but he's, the whole time that Dr. Heath and his team, the whole team, by the way, was cleared for top secret clearance with the military and working with this MK Ultra stuff, he was also working with this guy Becker, so it stands to reason Becker was also part of it.
Well, what you have is...
Okay, guys, so moving on to another video here. We have the story that China is surrounding Taiwan with a huge military drill. Of course, when we talk about world economic and political tensions, we've been looking at the Middle East a lot. We've been looking at Russia. But we have to shift our gaze over to the other side of the pond. They're in Asia. And so watch this video, which is about an interesting military drill that China is currently conducting. Something to keep an eye on.
This is Dabu 7. We have China once again launching massive drills surrounding Taiwan. And this time they're kind of pressing the issue and then sending a warning to the island's president. Now, they say that this is part B of a drill series that was initiated earlier this year. But this time, this joint drill is focusing on sea and air combat readiness, and they're targeting blockading some of the key Taiwanese ports in different areas around those ports. They're practicing assaults on maritime and ground targets, and they've just got them surrounded at this point. It's been speculated that at any time one of these drills could go live and they could make an incursion or they could make a move. It could all go into motion. At some point it seems it's going to, unless there is an absolutely peaceful resolution that comes about out of this. There's going to be some war here. It seems the West is backing Taiwan, and of course China's not just going to let this go. But the fact that they're targeting these areas, these ports, and you may recall when I spoke about the U.S. ports, there's a big red alert over the used in those ports because 80% of them, 80+% of them, come from China. And what we discovered here in the United States is that those cranes have modems built into them that are not supposed to be there. They were not contracted to be there. That is the situation right now in the United States. It's crazy. They could remote control them, access them at any time. And this is known now. I wonder if Taiwan has the same cranes in their ports, or well, I'm going to say a majority of the planet does, because China is the ones that makes these, majority of them. Just like they control the processing of the rare earth minerals and all this other stuff, China just constantly making.
Okay, guys, so what we see there is interesting technology popping up in certain things that are used throughout the world that could hint at the ability of control remotely. So with that said, here's one that, Jeremiah, I know you're going to have a comment on, which is the third Trump assassination attempt. Oh my goodness, man. We know they're going after him. Check this clip out, breaking down the situation.
Donald Trump in California. A man carrying several guns and fake passes was stopped by police at a rally in Coachella Valley on the weekend. As it turns out, folks, right now, Donald Trump speaking at a round table. Let's listen in to what he's got to say.
Biggest we've ever had by far. And then, of course, we had the Butler situation. But there's two butlers. We had two butlers. We had the one from 2 weeks ago where we had well over 100,000 people come to the middle of Pennsylvania. It was incredible. And then we had the first butler, and that was a big crowd too, but that was interrupted. And again, the spirit, and we lost a great person. Corey was a great person. And we were able to raise a tremendous amount of money for his family, which is great. And two other people were not expected to make it, and then tremendous doctors in Pennsylvania, local doctors, country doctors that were really, they were amazing. They did a great job. They saved them, both of them, living, and they're going to be fine, still recovering, but they're going to be fine. And they're two very great people, actually, all very much into the MAGA movement, the greatest movement that there's ever been in this country by far. There's never been you just have to look outside and see the kind of audience you have. We could have sold that thing out 4 times, and it's pretty big. You got a lot of, many thousands of people, but we could have sold it out many times. I would say, Rick, in almost every case we can sell it out many times. We had 2 months ago, we were in the Nassau Coliseum, which is essentially the size of Madison Square Garden, the big arena. And we had that packed, and we could have sold that one out a couple of more times. So it's been interesting. We just signed Madison Square Garden. We'll do Madison Square Garden. I would think it's a very big venue. It's the same size as Nassau.
Trump seems a little tired, Jeremiah. I don't know what's going on. He's probably
thousands, tens of thousands
outdone himself all these rallies, man, every day.
We're trying to get the arena in Pennsylvania.
What's with his hair?
And a couple of others arena.
His hair is
including
beautiful.
Atlanta.
I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, we'll leave that there because he is on a campaign stop, but that's not a rally. That's at a round table there in the state of Arizona. But just to bring you up to speed, folks, this is some information that has been provided by the local sheriff, Chad Bianco, from Coachella, who says that this suspect, who has been identified as Vem Miller, was intercepted by police at a checkpoint, and I'm reading from the New York Post here, was intercepted by police at a checkpoint about a half mile from the rally entrance on the weekend, so it's about a kilometre. He was possessing fake phony press and VIP passes, but the quote here, because, you know, he might have just been carrying and then might not have actually had an intention, but the police are saying the opposite. He says that this person, Vem Miller, is believed to be a member of a right-wing anti-government organisation and, according to police, was plotting to kill Trump. That's according to police. No comment just yet from Donald Trump. We'll keep having a look at that.
As you can see there, somebody who was allegedly arrested for plotting to make an attempt. What do you think about that, Jeremiah?
I have a lot of thoughts on it, but I'll just say, I mean, that's how you know that they're trying to silence Trump, and they'll be trying to do that again and again because he's a middle finger to the establishment. I mean, he is exposing stuff that they don't want exposed. And it's funny, when it first happened, because I was watching it, I watched the first report, it like popped up on my feed, and the mainstream media was reporting a man arrested at Trump rally. That's all they said, and they said that the first time. And the second time, oh, he was just shot at, or there was gunshots heard at Trump rally. They try to downplay it because, I mean, if it had been anybody else, any other presidential candidate, it would be like, oh, assassination attempt, you know? They just downplay it. It's so sad. So bad.
Yeah. Let's check out this next clip, which is a massive change is happening in 9 days, where everything in the U.S., Russia, and BRICS nation changes forever. Check this video out.
Is being rearranged right before our eyes right now, and Washington, D.C. is desperately trying to hold on to power. There is a global war that is quietly happening that they don't want you to know about. Something huge is about to happen, and United States dominance is on the line right now. While most of the United States is focused on our election just 23 days away, something huge is happening where the global world order is being rearranged right before our eyes right now, and Washington, D.C. is desperately trying to hold on to power. There is a global war that is quietly happening that they don't want you to know about. Guys, this is as big as it gets for world power and U.S. dollar dominance and your Biden administration. So you better pay. So there are a number of huge developments we need to do, have massive implications for Western powers. And I'm going to show you something very troubling that NATO just did, which no mainstream media are covering, by the way. It's very concerning. But first, let's start with what's happening in Russia in just 9 days from now, a global showdown that is unprecedented in its scale and its implications. A titanic struggle is about to unfold between NATO and the BRICS nations. The timing, by the way, is set on purpose right before the United States election. It's a clear message from Putin and China that American dominance is coming to an end. This clash will officially kick off at the eagerly anticipated BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia on October 22nd. Now, while the mainstream media might be busy pushing distractions, we are here to break down what's going on right now, what's truly at stake, a global battle over resources, the unraveling of the US dollar's dominance, the sort of fighting on from NATO, and the potential shift for a seismic shift in global power dynamics right now. Now, you might be asking, why all the fuss about this summit? This isn't just any summit. This is the equivalent right now of the Bretton Woods Conference after World War II, which gave American dollar reserve currency status around the world. This BRICS summit represents the death of the Bretton Woods Conference and the end of US dollar dominance. Donald Trump said this is going to be worse than losing a war.
Our country's going to hell, and we're not going to be the big bar. We have power, but it's waning. In fact, it's waning in terms of our currency. And I'm not just talking about the value of our currency. I'm talking about our currency being used throughout the world.
You want it to remain. You want the dollar to remain the world's reserve currency.
Well, I think it's bigger than losing any war.
And Trump is right. Under President Biden and Kamala Harris, the BRICS nations have massively accelerated their size and scope. On October 22nd, the BRICS countries, comprised of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa as its leaders, now expanding to include Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE. It now represents a staggering 35.6% of global GDP by purchasing power parity and 45% of the world's population. Iran has joined BRICS. At the same time, nutjobs in Washington, D.C. want to go to war with Iran to help Israel.
I've been saying for 6 months now, hit Iran. They have oil fields out in the open. They have the Revolutionary Guard headquarters you can see from space. Blow it off the map.
You see how this is lining up? Russia and China backing Iran? How do you think this is going to go? This grouping is now a significant counterbalance to Western economic and geopolitical hegemony. Strength in numbers. But where does the real power?
Okay, so as you can hear, strength in numbers, and when you see a number of nations banding together to challenge and threaten the current establishment of the world empire as defined by the United States and her interests, then you see the current situation this gentleman was describing in the video we just watched here. What do you think, Jeremiah?
I mean, I think you covered it pretty well.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I really think it's interesting to see how Russia is escalating the tensions with Iran and Israel by inviting Iran to be part of their conglomeration, their conglomerate of nations. So that's what I thought was pretty fascinating with that one. This next clip is something out of Nashville, Tennessee.
He is a registered voter and has poll books. The legitimate connection to the network is to verify two things: that the person presenting themselves to vote is a registered voter and has not already voted in this election.
Dallas County spent $4 million to buy 4,200 of these new electronic polling books from the same company that makes the county's voting machines. While these voting machines aren't connected to the internet, the polling books, which has voters' information, are.
The polling books that we'll be using are fully compatible with our rigorous security system.
What we saw in Dallas was that about 15 minutes before the polls closed, there was no one in line, and the count of people who had checked in started increasing.
They just jumped again. All the numbers are jumping. Sitting here, we're doing nothing. I remember this one. I jumped from the last one I was like,
And the worker noticed that said,
It's
hey,
proof, guys.
on here?
Look at this.
The
It's
number's
proof.
going up.
You see that?
And we haven't checked in any more voters.
I'm now at 817. I'm at 1,089 now.
Why
There
were
was a
these
command
videos
coming
covered
into
up?
that poll book to say,
Reminds
check
me
in
of
this
YouTube.
voter.
Dr. Doherty is correct. Experts are finding dedicated modems that directly connect with the e-poll books to relay real-time data. It's not just Dallas, where e-poll books are being taken over remotely. During a Georgia Senate investigative hearing, a poll worker described how her poll book was taken over by Dominion Voting.
I understood that the voting system was separated from the world by an air gap connected to the internet. What I thought I heard you say is that you were able to contact Dominion, they were able to fix the problem. That indicates to me that somehow they're able to communicate with the device that you have.
Yes, sir, they were. I had to give them permission to take over my pull pad so that they could reprogram it.
CISA teamed with states across the country to implement connectivity to AT&T's FirstNet network. Curiously, just after rampant fraud in Georgia's elections was exposed, AT&T's central office in Nashville, which served the region, was destroyed in a Christmas Day bombing. Finally, if you have a voting convenience center, by law, it has to be hooked to the internet.
Well, let's check in with our audience on Team Domination's claims thus far. In your safe even without voter ID? No.
Oh man. So we have an interesting breakdown there of possible election hoodoo-nannery. Do you think it's going to be a fair election coming up, Jeremiah and Opa? What do you guys think?
I think we'll be able to tell by who wins if it's real or not, if it's rigged or not.
According to a recent Barna poll, less than 50% of Christians today will be voting in this coming election. I don't know if that's, some foreboding for a slide of people of faith from the previous all-time highs of the last election that Donald Trump won, which was an enormous landslide, a victory, like absolutely incredible. And anyways, with that said, there's something I find very interesting about the way that architecture has evolved in today's world. And so this clip is something I wanted you guys to see, which is about psychological warfare. And you can see how they want us to be depressed, boxed-in little creatures with no hope as you see the evolution of architecture in the public landscape. Check this out. You see how they're kind of making things simpler and taking away the beautiful this we have just last two short little clips here is so this is in relation to the weather modification claims we have regarding North Carolina. Watch this as it discusses HAARP and the way that through frequency and tampering with the natural realm that we live in, HAARP is able to control weather patterns. Now look at this. No, it's not starting.
30 watts, looking for oil in the ground. I found 26 oil wells over a 9-state area, and 100% of the time was accurate with just 30 watts of power beaming straight into solid rock. HAARP uses 1 billion watts beamed straight into the ionosphere for experiments. Picture these strings on the piano as layers of the earth. Each one has its own frequency. What we used to do is beam radio waves into the ground, and it would vibrate any strings that were present in the ground. We might get a sound back like, and we'd say, that's natural gas. We might get a sound back like, and we'd say, that's crude oil. We were able to identify each frequency. We accomplished this with just 30 watts of radio power. If you do this with 1 billion watts, the vibrations are so violent that the entire piano would shake. In fact, the whole house would shake. In fact, the vibrations could be so severe underground that could even cause an earthquake.
Frequency is like everything. Like, it does so much. Like when you were showing that one little piece of drop on that bass, that's a good example of how they can control everything around it. It's crazy.
It shows how it would be possible for instruments of amazing proportion and strength that have pretty much become these black magic weather modification devices. And with enough money, enough infrastructure, anything is possible. And what we see here is that, yes, it is possible that they stirred and steered the hurricanes and weather patterns throughout different portions of the world, not just here in the Gulf, but over in the Middle East. We have proven, recorded evidence that through man-made modification and tampering, disasters have occurred. And I think you guys have probably enough of our different segments today, so thank you for listening, and that's all the news for this week, Jeremiah.
All right, thanks, Jake, for another great current news as always. And now a quick look at the Babylon Rising bookstore.
Check out our new and improved BabylonRisingBooks.com, where you can get Rob Skiba's books, bundles, DVDs, DVD-ROMs, videos, and so much more. You can even get Sheila and Jeremiah's books, so check it out now.
So it's about that time for an all-new Opa's Corner. Take it away, Opa.
Mein Hut, der hat 3 Ecken. 3 Ecken hat mein Hut. Und hat nicht 3 Ecken, dann ist es nicht mein Hut.
The strange, the bizarre, the unexpected. These are the kinds of subjects a man named Robert L. Ripley challenged us to
believe it or not.
Believe it or not, you.
Wally, believe it or not.
Believe it or not.
Believe it! You're a loony.
Dolphins are born with whiskers that fall out and turn into dimples that can sense electric fields. Believe it or not. Some of the more than 50,000 tennis balls used during Wimbledon each year are donated to conservationists to make houses for mice. Believe it or not. In 2024, a leaky fire hydrant in Brooklyn, New York, inspired locals to create a makeshift goldfish pond that some residents now want to make permanent. Believe it or not. In 2024, Arun Maini and Matthew Perks, a pair of YouTubers, constructed a scaled-up iPhone 15 Pro Max measuring 6.74 feet tall. Believe it or not. In Augsburg, Germany, traffic lights were installed at ground level to prevent smartphone pedestrians from causing accidents due to distraction. Believe it or not. Cupcakes were originally known as number cakes or 1, 2, 3, 4 cakes. Believe it or not. Ben & Jerry's was originally going to be a bagel company. Believe it or not. Pound cake is named because it traditionally contained a pound each of eggs, butter, sugar, and flour, not because it weighs 1 pound. Believe it or not. In 2021, a couple renovating their home found a giant hand-painted Monopoly board under the carpet. Believe it or not. Scissors is the least popular choice in the game of rock, paper, scissors. Believe it or not. A Pennsylvania game warden was called to a mini golf course after workers found a live groundhog inside a claw machine. Believe it or not. In 2024, the Ohio Supreme Court ruled that chicken wings advertised as boneless can have bones. Believe it or not. In 2023, Motorola invented an edible password pill. When swallowed, it interacted with the stomach's gastric juices to transmit an 18-bit EKG-like signal that unlocked phones. Believe it or not. Hawkins Barbecue, a food truck in the UK, offers an insurance policy. If a bird steals your meal before you eat it, they'll replace it for free. Believe it or not. In 2023, an android robot named Ever6 took the podium in Seoul, conducting a performance by South Korea's National Orchestra. Believe it or not. There is a 3,000-year-old statue that looks like Michael Jackson. Believe it or not. Japan is installing vending machines that unlock and dispense free food and supplies in case of a disaster, such as a severe earthquake. Believe it or not. A swaying hammock is likely to produce a deeper sleep than a stationary bed. Believe it or not. Mosquitoes have a sense receptor tuned specifically to human sweat. Believe it or not. When Joel Berger married Ashley King in 2015, Burger King paid for their wedding. Believe it or not. I have kleptomania, but when it gets bad, I take something for it. How come Miss Universe is only ever won by people from Earth? I went to an aquarium this weekend, but I didn't stay long. There's something fishy about that place. What's the best thing about Switzerland? The flag's a big plus. I found a lion in my closet the other day. When I asked what it was doing there, it said, Narnia business. What's a cat's favorite instrument? Percussion. I was going to tell you a joke about boxing, but I forgot the punchline. A doctor gave a man 6 months to live. The man couldn't pay his bill, so he gave him another 6 months. I stayed at an elegant hotel. The room service had an unlisted number. My grandson complains about headaches. I tell him all the time, when you get out of bed, it's feet first. Every time I ask what time it is, I get a different answer. I call my lawyer and say, "Can I ask you 2 questions?" He says, "What's the second question?" "Doctor, my leg hurts. What can I do?" The doctor says, "Limp." The doctor says, "You'll live to be 60. I am 60. See, what did I tell you? Last night I ordered a whole meal in French. Even the waiter was amazed. It was a Chinese restaurant. A man calls a lawyer's office. The phone is answered. Schwartz, 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 and Schwartz. The man says, "Let me talk to Mr. Schwartz." "I'm sorry, he's on vacation." "Then let me talk to Mr. Schwartz." "He's on a big case, not available for a week." "Well, then let me talk to Mr. Schwartz." "He's playing golf today." "Okay, then let me talk to Mr. Schwartz." Speaking. A doctor has a stethoscope up to a man's chest. The man asks, "Doc, how do I stand?" The doctor says, "That's what puzzles me." Have you noticed that families on TV never watch television?
True.
I have a car I call Flattery because it gets me nowhere. A Polish man bought a zebra for a pet. What does he call the zebra? Spot. Most of them are for bravery, but the one I'm most proud of is for not peeing on the carpet. Don't listen to them. You're already walking just fine. You can't go fly fishing without waterproof overalls. Darth Waiters. How can I get people to like me? Basting in white wine and fresh ground pepper would be a good start. No, I'm not drinking box wine. I'm drinking wine in a box. Not bad, Kimosabi. But this one little better, maybe. What kind of sicko gives out chocolate? Loch Ness. Let's make a deal. I give you your ball back, and you delete those photos. Should I climb up or you climb down? It's obviously a prehistoric representation of an early encounter with ancient aliens. Little Rock, Ark, and Saw. Good evening. Welcome to No News is Good News. Thank you, and good night.
True.
Smile. I had a dream about a huge flaming rock falling from the sky. What do you think it means? It means you woke me up for no reason. Go back to sleep. Thanks for coming. Something's wrong. Everything just seems a little too quiet and normal today. Books we want banned. This year's reading list. Cloud gazing with a future meteorologist. You might see a polar bear, but I see a large mass of condensed water vapor caused by warm air turbulence as it reaches the troposphere, commonly known as cumulonimbus cloud. Repurposing the aqueducts of ancient Rome. What? What's so funny? Being a politician, you should like this one, sir. It's made with special flame retardant material. Fligler and Son. I told you, all of this would be yours someday, son. And today is that day. Wow. Thanks, Dad. I think. You're fired. Get out. Whoop. Why the Tower of Pisa leans. Why are all my royal chariots so dented and dinged up? Hail, Caesar! Very good, but again, what happened to my chariots? It's stuck in overdrive. What should I do? I'm crossing the river because I'm tired of being asked why I crossed the road. I have to call you back. I'm in spin class. Wah, 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 wah. Which one is yours? Scarecrow. You want to play rough? Okay, say hello to my little friend. Uh-oh, Bob. Your check engine light is on. Vicks, gym, and personal training. Hello, I'm Thor. Try stretching out first next time. Make love, not burgers. Oh, great. Mad cow disease. When I was a kid, my parents would always say, "Excuse my French," after a swear word. I'll never forget my first day at school when my teacher asked me if any of us knew any French. And that concludes another OPA'S Corner.
Mein Hut, der hat 3 Ecken. 3 Ecken hat mein Hut. Und hat nicht 3 Ecken, dann ist es nicht mein Hut.
OPA'S Corner is now available on my own YouTube channel. Like, share, and subscribe.
Thank you, Opa, for another great OPA'S Corner. Now, before we get into History's Mysteries, it's brought to you by Brighter Image Lab, so check this out. Unleash your confidence with Brighter Image Lab. Growing up, I was always self-conscious about my smile, especially the gap between my teeth. It didn't just impact my childhood, it followed me into adulthood, affecting my confidence every time I smiled. When I started Skiba News Nation, I knew it was time to make a change. That's when I discovered Brighter Image Lab, and they truly transformed my confidence and my smile. Their veneers gave me the confidence I had been missing for all those years, and I want to share the same feeling with all of you. I believe in their products so much that I reached out to partner with them after I got my first pair, so that you could experience the same life-changing results. If you've ever felt insecure about your smile, like I have, now's your moment. These veneers are a game changer, and you can get 20% off with my code SKIBA20 at checkout. Or you can click the link below and start your journey to a more confident you. So check out Brighter Image Lab today. Your perfect smile is just one click away. It's time for an all-new History's Mysteries. So this week for History's Mysteries, we're going to be revisiting one of my favorite mysteries of all time, and I know Opa looked up to this man when he was a child, and it's George Reeves, this man right here, Superman. Everybody knows him as Superman. On June 16, 1959, at the age of 45 years old, he died from a gunshot wound to the head. So what we're going to be getting into is some new evidence, a deathbed confession, but before that, let's kind of get a background on what we already know about George Reeves.
He was TV's first superhero. In the 1950s, George Reeves achieved overnight stardom as a legendary Man of Steel. Then suddenly it was over. Reeves was found shot to death in his home, and ever since the question has haunted Hollywood: who killed Superman? The shooting death of television actor George Reeves still has many researchers wondering, who killed Superman?
Faster than a speeding bullet. More powerful than a locomotive. Able to leap tall buildings at a single bound. Look, up in the sky, it's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman. Yes, it's Superman.
In the 1950s, millions of TV viewers across America knew actor George Reeves as Superman, a man of steel, both indestructible and invincible.
Thin steel in his bare hands.
Then came June 16th, 1959. At about 1:30 a.m., Los Angeles police raced to George Reeves' fashionable Hollywood Hills home. Upstairs, they found George Reeves sprawled across his bed. He had died from a single gunshot wound to his right temple. Police quickly ruled Reeves' death a suicide. Yet within a week, some people began to question that ruling. It was the beginning of a controversy which continues to this day.
It doesn't make sense that George Reeves committed suicide because the evidence doesn't support that. I don't believe that George Reeves killed himself. I believe that he was murdered.
In 1952, George Reeves became an overnight star as Superman. Just 4 years earlier, he had been forced to eke out a living by digging septic tanks. One of his Superman co-stars was Jack Larson, who played Jimmy Olsen.
I didn't know what I was getting into. My presumption, as I'm sure George's was, no one will probably ever see this. And we became famous. I mean, we became hot, and I was just a guy around New York who some people would say, hey, didn't I see you in the Alcoa, or, you know, you'd be at a lunch counter, and suddenly I was Jimmy Olsen.
Away from the cameras, in his love life at least, Reeves bore little resemblance to the TV superhero. His steady girlfriend was Toni Mannix, a former Ziegfeld showgirl, 8 years his senior. Toni, however, was a married woman. Her husband, Eddie Mannix, had been vice president of MGM and was still a powerful force in Hollywood. No one knows why, but Mannix encouraged his wife's involvement with Reeves.
The relationship between George and Toni was a very open relationship. She took care of George very well. The car that he drove was bought by Toni, and the house that he lived in was Toni's house. But something happened in late '58 that broke that relationship off.
Toni Mannix was devastated by the breakup, but George moved on quickly. He soon began spending his time with Lenore Lemon, a member of the New York Cafe Society, much younger and much wilder than Toni Mannix.
She had a reputation, a bad reputation, for fights in clubs in New York. I think George liked the excitement that he found with her.
So George Reeves was classified as a sewer slide, okay? So that's what the official investigation says. They didn't do barely any investigation. They didn't look into all the facts that were there. There were so many facts that prove otherwise, in my opinion, and I have to say that, but it would definitely change your mind. There's suspects that are big in the case. Like, suspect number one is George's girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, Toni Mannix, who was married to one of the most powerful movie producers of that generation. And so we're going to be getting into a little bit more of that in this next clip, so let's check this out.
On the night George Reeves died, his life was not as perfect as it might have appeared. Although he pampered Lenore and they were reportedly engaged, Reeves could not keep up the lavish lifestyle he had enjoyed with Toni. Cut off from her money, the bills were piling up. Moreover, Reeves hadn't filmed a new episode of Superman in 2 years.
It's the perfume.
I think George Reeves was going through a midlife crisis. There are reports that George was planning to marry Lenore Lemon. I don't think he was going to do that, and that's where I think an argument came up.
By midnight, only Lenore Lemon and writer Robert Condon remained at the house with Reeves. Shortly thereafter, two neighbors stopped by looking for a party.
This is George Reeves. This is William Bliss.
The bar is closed.
George. I'm sorry.
According to Jim Note, Lenore became increasingly agitated about the way Reeves treated the guests.
George, look what you've done.
Fine. I think this made Lenore Lemon very angry that he treated a friend like that. She went up, and I think an argument started. I think George at that time told her that he had no plans to marry her, and that she became very angry and pulled out a gun. And I don't think on purpose, but I think accidentally shot George.
Half an hour passed before the police were notified. Jim Nolte believes the partygoers needed time to come up with a consistent story.
Carol was with William.
When questioned, everyone said Reeves had been alone in his bedroom and that he had shot himself. Immediately, the police ruled Reeves' death a suicide, despite some rather curious evidence.
So that's another suspect, Lenore Lemon. Okay, so let's just go over our suspects real quick. So suspect number one, George's ex-girlfriend, Toni Mannix. Second suspect, Eddie Mannix, Toni's husband, who was very jealous. One of the leading motives of murder is jealousy. And then number three is his current girlfriend, Lenore Lemon. That's just my opinion. But now let's look at the evidence that shows that there's a lot more to the story than a sewer slide. So check this out.
A .30 caliber Luger pistol lay on the floor between Reeves' legs, but there were no fingerprints on the gun.
Bullets in the ceiling.
A bullet had passed through Reeves' skull and lodged in the ceiling above his bed. And strangely, the fatal shell casing was found underneath Reeves' body.
If George Reeves had committed suicide and held the gun to his head, the bullet casing would have been expelled away from his body, not in back of his body where he would have fallen on it. There were no powder burns in his hands. There were no powder burns in his head, which means that the gun was held far enough away from his head that there weren't any powder burns. Somebody else pulled that trigger.
But was Lenore Lemon that somebody else? That George Reeves' death was a direct result of his illicit affair with Toni Mannix and her husband Eddie's anger over Reeves ending it.
I believe that the man was murdered. I believe that Eddie Mannix, tired of listening to his wife grieve and obsess over George Reeves, decided that it was time to take some action. It was my understanding that George's house was pretty much an open house, and I think it was relatively easy for Eddie Mannix to send someone over to the house during the course of a party that may have been going on, and Eddie Mannix had the guy killed.
Hey, Georgie boy.
Who are you?
George?
But what about the physical evidence? No fingerprints on the gun, the shell casing underneath Reeves' body, the lack of powder burns on his hands or head.
The absence of powder burns raises a question in a lot of people's minds because most people have a misconception about powder burns. They believe that powder burns happen when a weapon is placed up against the skin. That's not the case. When a weapon is placed against the skin, the powder goes into the wound and does not burn the outside of the skin. The police found no evidence of fingerprints on the weapon. George was a gun collector, and he kept his weapons well oiled. Well, a thick coat of oil won't hold fingerprints any more than water will.
Okay, taking. Perhaps the most difficult fact to explain is how the shell casing got under the body.
The .30 caliber Luger is designed to eject the shell upwards and away from the shooter. Most people think that couldn't put the shell behind him. However, if the gun was fired this way, it would eject the shell downward, for example.
According to the autopsy report, the bullet entered Reeves' head about 1 inch above his right ear. It exited about 1 3/4 of an inch above the left ear, then lodged in the ceiling. The bullet trajectory suggests that Reeves' head was tilted when the gun was fired. Consequently, he may have held the gun in an odd position.
If George had held the gun not this way, but in this way, the more comfortable and natural position, he would have ejected the shell directly behind him and onto the bed.
But why would Superman kill himself? Jack Larson believes that Reeves was despondent over his lack of work.
He couldn't get a job, I couldn't get a job. In the United States, I was too typed, as Jimmy was. Absolutely typed, nobody wanted me to work at all. I don't know what happened to George. I only had a bow tie and a sweater to worry about. George had the Superman outfit. So I was depressed, and I accepted instantly that he had committed suicide.
There is evidence to support all three theories about his death. I think there is evidence to support suicide. There is evidence to support a tragic accident. And there is evidence to support murder. The only people who know how George Reeves died are no longer with us.
Yes, it's Superman, strange visitor from another...
Who killed Superman? Was George Reeves' death the result of a secretive and perilous love triangle? Or was he the victim of a depression so profound that he took his own life? Perhaps we will never know. Perhaps this is one case destined to remain an unsolved mystery.
Never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the American way.
Now, this came out in the late 90s, early 2000s, and a lot of evidence, like DNA and all that stuff, has come forward to now prove that, you know, some of that guy's theories don't make any sense. Like, when somebody shoots a gun, there is gunpowder residue that goes on your hand. It doesn't just go away. You can wash your hands, but in this case, if he was the shooter, if he was the one that pulled the trigger, he should have gunpowder residue all over his hands. Just like Kurt Cobain, there should have been fingerprints on the gun. Makes zero sense to me. And a bullet will do almost anything. So the fact that the shell just happened to go behind him is very odd to me. You think it's weird, Opa?
Well, I don't know. The argument about him holding the gun upside down maybe make some sense about the shell casing going behind him, but still there are so many other things that don't make sense.
Now, what if I told you that there was a deathbed confession of one of these suspects saying that they did it?
Well, I'd say that sounds possible.
Well, let's play this update.
For decades, the question of whether or not TV Superman George Reeves committed suicide has remained one of Hollywood's great mysteries. The new movie Hollywoodland examines the question. Has tongues wagging again? Beverly Hills PR man Edward Lozzi believes he knows who killed the Man of Steel. In fact, he says one of the people responsible gave a deathbed confession. And I understand, Ed, that you and Toni Mannix, the mistress portrayed in the film, who was married to the Hollywood exec, you lived with her, platonic but relationship, and apparently she starts confessing on her deathbed to the priest?
Yes, it's great to be back, Catherine. You got it. You hit it pretty much on the head. She was a devout Catholic, and she was terrified of going to hell. And a lot of people know about the famous prayer sessions that she had. And when I first had the opportunity to move into the house on Il Retiro Way, that was part of what we did every Tuesday night. That was part of what I had to do there, was to pray with her to George. And she had this incredible shrine to George, and then with a picture of Jesus next to it, with prayer cards all around it.
And basically she was asking the priest if she didn't pull the trigger but had something to do with it, just what part of hell would she go to?
Yeah, she was actually trying to talk about the technicalities of whether it's the same, you know, room in hell that she would have if she didn't actually pull the trigger or kill him, but it was part of the conspiracy. So the news is that she did confess to a Catholic priest. I was in the room. There is no mystery about how George Reeves died. There are mysteries because, you know, of course, the Catholic priest isn't talking, and he won't. He's a retired gentleman.
Now, did this priest basically tell you to keep your mouth shut when you thought about doing something with the information?
After what I heard, the priest, after he gave absolution, which is what they call it, he said, you know, you can't discuss this. And I figured it was because of, you know, because it was a sacrament of the Catholic Church. He said, no, for your own good, you can't discuss this. So this was a priest that was a family friend, and, you know, who would go to Mass with us.
Yeah.
And part of what I did was take her to Mass, like what Dominic Dunn said the other day.
Well, let me interrupt you just a minute, because I want to play a clip from Dominic Dunn when he was talking to me on the show about the film. Let's listen.
I always thought that, I mean, I don't know. I'm just telling you my theory. Yeah. That Eddie Mannix had him taken care of.
And why would he need to do that?
Because I think that Toni was too involved. I mean, this wasn't like an affair. I mean, this was like, she was like mad about this guy. Toni Mannix was really jealous at the end, angry, and rejected.
So maybe your husband was doing her a favor.
Yeah, it could be.
All right, is that the theory? Is that your theory, that basically Eddie Mannix was going to take care of his hysterical wife by blowing away her former lover?
Yes, it's more than a theory to me. I'm prejudicial about it because I witnessed the confession. Dominic's got it right on. He hit it right on the head. In all my years of being in PR, I've never met a more fantastic, outgoing woman. She was like my Auntie Mame, but she was also a rageaholic. So she had the means, she had the motive, and she had the toughest guy, the most powerful guy in Hollywood, MGM, which ruled all of Hollywood, who had the power to fix things. And that's what he was. He was the fixer, and this is brought out pretty heavily. I'm looking forward to being at the premiere tonight. I haven't seen the whole movie yet, but I know that Diane Lane, I would never in a million years think that Toni Mannix would be immortalized forever by Diane Lane in this role, and I'm very happy for her.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I want to get one real quick clip in here. Let's take a look at this.
You don't know what I say, what I do. I don't let you. You're an old man and look at the blood on your hands. I'm in the picture business. I am.
Okay, well, what you just gave us could prove the outcome. I hope you enjoy the film tonight. It's smashing. Edward Lozzi, thank you very much.
Thanks, Catherine. Good to be back.
Okay.
She had the means, the motive, for what? Murder. So, Toni Mannix and Eddie Mannix confessed to killing George Reeves. I mean, Jake, what are your thoughts of this whole crazy story?
My thoughts are, until today, I have always believed that George Reeves died by kryptonite from Lex Luthor.
Well,
and, you know,
it was
I really
a kryptonite
think
bullet.
I want to hold to that. It was a kryptonite bullet, I guess. So, you know, I don't know, man. It's really sad because, you know, of course, he represented a lot to that generation of television watchers, and so when he died, it was like Superman died, and the psychological trauma that instills on a generation is immense because that guy represents invincibility.
Well, that's what
the
Opa was telling me.
hero dies.
Opa was telling me when he was
really weighs heavy.
You were what, 11 years old when it happened, and you said pretty much what Jake just described.
Yep, I was 11 years old when they killed him, and or he died, however it is. But I was shocked at the time. I mean,
how did Superman die?
Yeah, how did Superman? How can he die? Now, I was old enough to know that he was an actor, and that he really wasn't Superman. But still, it's like one of those things that it's impossible. He can't die. He just can't do it.
Yeah, and we've covered this case before, but never have I seen this particular footage of a deathbed confession, because last time it was kind of open-ended, like it could have been any of these series or it could have been none of these series, but it's pretty conclusive. I just want to know why they're going to leave his legacy tarnished. Why are they not going to, say, hey, this is what really happened. He didn't kill himself, because I probably shouldn't use these words on YouTube, but I mean, if he didn't do it, then it needs to be talked about. It needs to be fixed on Wikipedia. It's like they can, just like my dad, they list my dad as dying, how he didn't die. It's just very strange to me.
Oh yeah.
So that's all I got for George Reeves, but I got one more clip, and it is Excuse My Sense of Humor Part 2. So check this out.
Scared of the kitty. Come on. It's okay. It's just a kitty kitty. See? It's okay.
Hashtag Team Dog or Team Cats for Life. Okay.
To the left, to the left. To the left, to the left.
Dear Diary, the authorities have removed the pair of black pants from the couch. There is no longer any place for me to sleep. I have vomited 3 times in protest, but there is no sign that anything will change. My only other hope for rest is on the computer keyboard, which is nearby, but sadly no one is currently using it.
I should warn you of the monster known as vacuum. It can eat and yell at the same time. And I've seen it eat everything. Seriously, like a paperclip and 2 cat toys. Didn't even flinch. To hide from vacuum, you may use the curtains of invisibility. Oh yeah, you're good. Good hiding.
You know why I pulled you over?
Because I'm black?
Yeah. No. Your wife fell out of the car about a mile back.
Why it was so quiet?
So, hope you guys enjoyed my volume 2 of Excuse My Sense of Humor. What did you think of those?
Man, yeah, no, it's your wife fell out of the car a mile back. The last thing he says was, "No wonder it was so quiet in here."
Yeah.
Now, I could tell you one thing, that my dachshund is not afraid of cats.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you could see this cute little bundle right here, but he's intimidating. He's right off camera right here, but there he is. Charlie, say hi. He's not going to do it because I want him to do it. Because that's how KDs are. Anyways, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you guys want me to, I will continue to show you guys my weird sense of humor. So, you got some memes for me, Jake?
I absolutely do.
Yeah.
I think everybody needs their area of humor covered in our show. So please don't go anywhere, because hopefully we will find your funny bone at some point, even if it's covered in the end of the world as we know it. You know? All right, let's check.
Well, meet me up. Meet me up. Meet me up. Meet me up.
Meet me up. Ka-chow! Hey, the greatest trick the devil ever told was convincing the world he does not exist. Alright, well, dear IRS, I would like to cancel my subscription. Please remove my name from your mailing list.
Yes, please.
So, yeah, that's who the devil actually is. In
I wouldn't doubt
world.
it.
It's he wears the IRS man's, uniform.
And the love of money, man.
Alright. So, on that same topic, my tax dollars, somehow also my tax dollars, we're talking about the Middle East here, and somehow none of my tax dollars going to relief there in North Carolina. Oh, man. I thought the first meme, I shared this many episodes back, I did not know it could get better, but somebody improved it. Somehow none of my tax dollars. It's a meme of our age.
Yep.
Man. All right, teach your kids about weather modification at an early age with the HAARP playset from Mattel.
It's actually kind of cool looking.
Yeah. Mom, I want to manipulate the weather.
Yeah. It's crazy. My father-in-law, I don't think was ever into conspiracies until we started the show. And now he's sending me videos of weather modification. And I think it's the funniest thing.
Wow. Hey, I mean, it's an age where people who have been lied to their entire lives are finally realizing there's more than meets the eye.
Yep.
All right, check this out. Recent Tesla unveiling show was what a sight to behold. Literally like iRobot come to life, if anybody's ever seen that Will Smith movie. But you can really see the predictive programming used here, and I think it was probably on purpose from Elon. He was like, look guys, I just want it to be like iRobot.
Yeah. Well, that whole yeah.
I'm trying to laugh right
here. He does have the most evil laugh in the world, and it's so funny because he doesn't know it. But that event was very crazy.
Amazing to watch. Thank you, Jeremiah. That's all the memes for this week, everybody. Thank you for your participation in our show.
All right, thanks, Jake, for another great current news and memes as always. Opa, thank you for another great Opus Corner. I hope you guys enjoyed today's histories, mysteries, and my sick sense of humor. And we hope you enjoyed today's episode as a whole. Stay awake, not woke, subscribe, and stay tuned. If you like what we do here on Skiba News Nation, please like and subscribe. And also share with others so we can grow the biggest truth-seeking community on the internet. Huge shout out to all of our Patreons out there. If you like bonus content, you want some extra Skiba News Nation stuff, please go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation.
Son of the legendary Ross Jeremiah Skiba.
It's like they don't even want to wake up.
I can't hear you, man.